Welcome to Stories That Heal, where real-life encounters reveal the raw truths of humanity. Today, we uncover a surprising story of transformation at a luxury boutique on Rodeo Drive. When assumptions and arrogance led to a shocking encounter with Melania Trump, the fallout was unforgettable. Stay tuned as we dive into this dramatic tale of redemption, humility, and the power of kindness. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories that inspire and captivate. The boutique on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills stood as a symbol of exclusivity and luxury. Its marble exterior gleamed under the Californian sun, and the glass doors opened into a pristine world of designer handbags, exquisite jewelry, and couture clothing that could easily cost more than most people's annual rent. This was Natalie's domain. Natalie had been the manager of this prestigious boutique for nearly a decade. Tall, elegant, and with a sharp eye for detail, she ran the store with precision. Everything from the placement of handbags to the angle of the jewelry displays had to meet her exacting standards. She was known for her unwavering commitment to protecting the boutique's reputation. To her, exclusivity was not just a brand promise, it was a code to be upheld at all costs. Her team knew the rules by heart. Employees were expected to be professional, polished, and utterly devoted to the store's ethos. No idle chatter, no smudged glass, and certainly no tolerance for anyone who didn't belong. Natalie herself often stood by the entrance, scanning each customer who entered with the precision of a security camera. "Protect the brand," she would often say during team meetings. "We are not just selling products, we are selling an image." On this particular Tuesday morning, the boutique hummed with quiet activity. Soft classical music floated through the air, and sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the racks of silk scarves and designer handbags. Natalie's heels clicked against the polished marble floor as she inspected the store, ensuring everything was in place. The store's atmosphere was one of calm sophistication, just as she liked it. Then, the glass doors opened. A woman walked in, her heels tapping lightly against the floor. She was tall and poised, dressed in an understated cream coat and oversized sunglasses. Her presence was commanding, yet her attire was surprisingly simple for a place like this. She lingered by the scarf display, her fingers lightly brushing the fabric as if appreciating its texture. Natalie's instincts kicked in immediately. She observed the woman with a discerning eye, noting the absence of a visible designer logo or a companion to validate her presence. To Natalie, this woman didn't fit the profile of their typical clientele, those who arrived in chauffeured cars, dripping in luxury, or those whose names were already on the boutique's private client list. She approached the woman briskly, her smile professional but distant. "Good morning, ma'am," Natalie began, her voice calm but firm. "We have a private shopping appointment scheduled shortly, so I'm afraid I'll need to ask you to leave." The woman turned, lowering her sunglasses just enough to reveal piercing blue eyes that briefly unsettled Natalie. There was something familiar about her, but Natalie couldn't quite place it. "I assure you, I'll only be a moment," the woman said, her tone calm but resolute. "I just wanted to look around." Natalie stiffened. The boutique's exclusivity was non-negotiable, and she wasn't about to make exceptions, no matter how composed this woman seemed. "I'm sorry, but this is a private establishment," she replied, her smile fading. "If you'd like to book an appointment, we'd be happy to accommodate you another time." For a moment, the woman simply stared at Natalie, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she slid her sunglasses back on and walked out. The echo of her heels on the marble floor lingered as the glass doors closed behind her. Natalie felt a faint sense of satisfaction. She had upheld the rules, protected the brand, and maintained the boutique's exclusivity. Yet, as she returned to her post by the entrance, a flicker of unease crept into her thoughts. There was something about the woman's calm demeanor, her quiet confidence, that didn't sit right. It was as though she knew something Natalie didn't, but Natalie quickly dismissed the feeling. People came and went in this world of high-end luxury, many of them attempting to bluff their way into spaces they didn't belong. Wannabe influencers, curious tourists, and even tabloid reporters had all tried to breach the boutique's exclusivity before. Natalie prided herself on her ability to see through such acts, and she was convinced this was no different. The rest of the day passed uneventfully. Natalie busied herself overseeing the arrival of a new shipment of couture dresses, ensuring every hemline was pressed to perfection before they were displayed. By evening, she had all but forgotten about the mysterious woman. As she locked up the store and headed home, however, the memory of their brief encounter resurfaced. There was something unsettling about the way the woman had left. No protest, no argument, just quiet acceptance. It wasn't the reaction of someone who had been caught trying to bluff their way into a high-end boutique. It was the reaction of someone who knew they didn't have to justify their presence. Still, Natalie shook off the thought. She had done her job, just as she always did. Yet, as she prepared for bed that night, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she might have made a mistake, one that could cost her more than she realized. The following morning, Natalie arrived at the boutique early, as she always did. The sun had barely risen over Rodeo Drive, casting a golden glow on the street's iconic storefronts. She stepped inside, greeted by the familiar scent of polished marble and luxury leather. This was her sanctuary, a carefully curated world of perfection. Natalie began her usual routine, walking through the store to ensure everything was in its rightful place. She adjusted a rack of silk blouses, checked the angle of the spotlight on the jewelry case, and straightened a display of designer handbags. For a brief moment, she felt a sense of control, as though yesterday's encounter with the mysterious woman had been nothing more than a passing inconvenience. That illusion didn't last long. By mid-morning, whispers began to ripple through the boutique's staff. It started with Sophia, one of the younger sales associates, who approached Natalie with a hesitant expression. "Ms. Natalie," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "did you hear about the woman from yesterday?" Natalie raised an eyebrow. "What about her?" she asked, her tone sharp. And Sophia glanced around as if ensuring no one else was within earshot. "One of the customers this morning said it was Melania Trump." Natalie froze, her hand tightening around the edge of the counter. "Melania Trump?" she repeated, disbelief etched into her features. Sophia nodded earnestly. "They showed me a picture on their phone. It was definitely her." For a moment, Natalie's mind raced. Could it be true? Had she dismissed one of the most recognizable women in the world from her boutique without a second thought? She replayed the encounter in her mind. The woman's calm demeanor, her piercing blue eyes, the quiet confidence with which she had left. Suddenly, it all seemed to fit. But Natalie wasn't about to admit any misstep. She straightened her posture, masking her unease with her usual air of authority. "It doesn't matter who she was," she said briskly. "Rules are rules. We can't let just anyone wander in without an appointment." Sophia hesitated, as though considering whether to press the issue, but ultimately nodded and returned to her duties. Natalie, however, couldn't shake the gnawing sense of unease that had taken hold. If that really had been Melania Trump, the consequences could be significant. The boutique thrived on its reputation, and any damage to that reputation could have lasting effects. As the day progressed, Natalie's worst fears began to materialize. Whispers among the staff grew louder, and even some customers seemed to be talking about the incident. One woman, dressed in a tailored suit and holding a latte, leaned over to her companion and whispered loudly enough for Natalie to hear, "This is the place, isn't it? I can't believe they treat someone like her that way." Natalie pretended not to notice, but her composure was starting to crack. She retreated to her office, hoping to escape the growing tension. Sitting at her desk, she pulled out her phone and began scrolling through social media. What she found made her stomach drop. A post had surfaced, recounting the incident in vague but damning terms. It didn't mention the boutique by name, but the details were clear enough for anyone familiar with the area to connect the dots. Comments flooded the post, with users speculating about which store it was and expressing outrage over how Melania Trump had been treated. Natalie tossed her phone onto the desk, her chest tightening. This wasn't just a minor embarrassment, it was a potential PR nightmare. She tried to convince herself that it would blow over, that people would move on to the next scandal by tomorrow. But deep down, she knew this was different. The boutique's reputation was on the line, and her role as its gatekeeper had put it there. The next morning, Natalie arrived at the boutique earlier than usual. She wanted to get ahead of the day, to regain control before things spiraled further. But as she unlocked the doors and stepped inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something she couldn't prepare for. By midday, the boutique was bustling with activity. Customers browsed the racks, sales associates moved swiftly to assist them, and the store hummed with the quiet efficiency Natalie had worked so hard to cultivate. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe that the worst was behind her. Then the glass doors swung open. The air seemed to shift as a tall, poised figure entered the boutique. It was her, the woman Natalie had dismissed just 2 days earlier. But this time, she wasn't alone. A small entourage followed her, including a security detail in tailored suits, a woman carrying a sleek leather briefcase, and another who appeared to be a publicist. Behind them, several photographers lingered just outside, their cameras flashing in rapid succession. The boutique fell silent. Customers stopped mid-browse, their eyes drawn to the scene unfolding before them. Employees froze, their gazes darting between Natalie and the woman who now stood at the center of the room. Melania Trump. She was dressed in a fitted black dress, simple yet commanding, and her presence was magnetic. As she removed her sunglasses, her piercing blue eyes locked onto Natalie, who felt her breath catch in her throat. "Good afternoon," Melania said, her voice calm but firm. "I'd like to look around now. Is that allowed?" The question hung in the air, its weight palpable. Natalie's instincts screamed at her to say something, to regain control of the situation, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she nodded stiffly, stepping aside to let Melania and her entourage pass. As Melania moved through the boutique, her presence commanded the room. She examined the displays with an air of quiet authority, her fingers brushing over fabrics and her eyes pausing on price tags. To Natalie, it felt less like shopping and more like an evaluation, an assessment of everything she had worked so hard to protect. The tension in the boutique was electric. Customers pretended to browse, but their movements were subdued, their attention fixed on Melania. Employees stood at attention, unsure of what to do, but unwilling to be caught slacking. Natalie, meanwhile, stood rooted to the spot, her mind racing. She had made a critical error, and now she was paying the price. She could feel her authority slipping away with each passing moment, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. And then, Melania turned toward her. The moment was brief, but it carried an intensity that left Natalie feeling exposed. Melania's gaze was calm, almost serene, but it held a quiet power that was impossible to ignore. Without saying a word, she continued browsing, leaving Natalie to grapple with the weight of her own misjudgment. Unbeknownst to her, the most unforgettable part of the day was yet to come. The boutique remained suspended in a hushed tension as Melania Trump's presence rippled through the space. Every step she took seemed deliberate, each gesture composed. It was clear to everyone in the room, staff and customers alike, that this was no ordinary visit. As she paused at a display of handbags, a junior associate named Clara hesitantly approached her. "May I assist you, ma'am?" Clara asked, her voice wavering slightly but filled with genuine courtesy. Melania turned to her with a small smile. "Thank you. I would like to see this one," she said, gesturing to a sleek black handbag with subtle gold accents. Clara nodded quickly. retrieving the bag and placing it in Melania's hands with the utmost care. From her spot near the cashier counter, Natalie watched the interaction unfold. A sinking feeling weighed on her chest as she observed how Clara, a junior employee, navigated the situation with poise and grace, qualities Natalie had failed to display just 2 days earlier. She clenched her hands at her sides, torn between pride in her staff and shame at her own actions. Melania examined the handbag closely, her fingers gliding over the smooth leather. "It's beautiful," she remarked, then turned her attention back to Clara. "You've been very kind. Thank you for your help." Clara blushed, clearly surprised by the acknowledgement. "Of course, ma'am. Let me know if there's anything else I can assist you with." Melania nodded, and as Clara stepped away, she turned toward the jewelry case. A subtle but unmistakable shift occurred in the boutique as customers angled closer to observe her next move. Even the staff found themselves stealing glances, their curiosity mingled with a nervous energy. Natalie, meanwhile, felt frozen in place. Her usual confidence had deserted her, replaced by an oppressive weight of uncertainty. She knew she should be taking charge, offering assistance, or at least projecting authority. Instead, she stood rooted to the spot, her mind churning with questions. What was Melania thinking? Was this an intentional display of grace, or a silent reprimand for how she had been treated before? As Melania reached the jewelry case, she gestured for another employee to join her. This time, it was Marcus, the boutique's most experienced associate. He approached with his usual air of calm professionalism, though even he seemed slightly awed by her presence. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Marcus said. "Is there something here that catches your eye?" Melania's gaze swept over the glittering array of necklaces, bracelets, and earrings before settling on an exquisite diamond necklace. "This piece," she said, her tone thoughtful. "May I see it up close?" Marcus carefully retrieved the necklace, presenting it to her on a velvet display pad. The diamonds sparkled brilliantly under the boutique's expertly placed lighting, casting tiny rainbows onto the glass case. As Melania studied the necklace, she turned slightly, her eyes landing directly on Natalie. "What do you think?" she asked, her voice calm but carrying an edge that sent a jolt through the room. The question caught Natalie off guard. She blinked, struggling to compose herself as every pair of eyes in the boutique shifted toward her. "It's one of our finest pieces," Natalie managed to say, though her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "A true statement of elegance." Melania held her gaze for a moment longer, then turned back to the necklace. "I'll take it," she said simply, sliding a sleek black credit card across the counter. Marcus nodded, efficiently completing the transaction. The tension in the room was almost palpable as everyone watched Melania sign the receipt with a fluid motion. But instead of pocketing the necklace immediately, she gestured for Marcus to place it back in its display box. As the transaction concluded, Melania turned once more to Natalie. Her expression remained calm, but her words carried the weight of a quiet reprimand. "It's important, don't you think?" she said, her voice measured. "To treat everyone with respect, especially when you don't know who they are." The boutique fell utterly silent. Natalie felt the ground beneath her feet tilt, as though she might topple over from the sheer force of the statement. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could she possibly say? Melania's words were a mirror, reflecting her own failings back at her with brutal clarity. Melania didn't wait for a response. Instead, she gestured to the publicist standing nearby, who handed her a small, elegant envelope. Turning back to Natalie, Melania extended the envelope with a composed expression. "This is for your staff," she said, a token of appreciation for their professionalism. Natalie hesitated, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted the envelope. It was heavier than she expected, and a glance inside revealed a check for a significant amount. Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of the gesture settled over her. But Melania wasn't finished. She turned to Clara, who had returned to the jewelry counter to assist another customer. "Thank you again for your help today," Melania said, her tone warm and genuine. "You've been wonderful." Clara's eyes widened in surprise, and a shy smile spread across her face. "Thank you, ma'am. It was an honor to assist you." With that, Melania began to make her way toward the door, her entourage falling into step behind her. The room seemed to exhale collectively as the tension eased slightly, though the sense of awe remained. As she exited, the photographers outside sprang into action, their camera flashes igniting a frenzy. Inside, the boutique remained still, as though everyone was processing what had just unfolded. Customers whispered in hushed tones, their curiosity barely contained, while employees exchanged wide-eyed glances. For Natalie, the moment was a reckoning. The woman she had dismissed so casually just days ago had returned with grace, dignity, and a lesson she would never forget. Retreating to her office, Natalie closed the door and sat down heavily at her desk. She opened the envelope once more, staring at the check inside. It wasn't just the amount that stunned her. It was what it represented. Melania's generosity was a stark contrast to Natalie's own behavior, a reminder of the power of humility and respect. For the first time in years, Natalie felt unsure of her place in the boutique she had worked so hard to control. But one thing was clear. She had been given an opportunity to reflect, to grow, and to make amends, and she intended to seize it. The boutique gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy after Melania Trump's departure, but the tension lingered like an invisible shadow. Customers murmured among themselves, sharing bits of what they had witnessed, while employees tried to process the whirlwind of events. Natalie sat alone in her office, the envelope with Melania's check still resting on her desk. She stared at it, the weight of her actions and their consequences settling over her like a heavy blanket. Natalie had always taken pride in her leadership, believing that her strict adherence to protocol was what made the boutique a symbol of exclusivity. But now, that pride felt misplaced. Melania's words echoed in her mind. "It's important to treat everyone with respect, especially when you don't know who they are." The truth was undeniable. Natalie had failed, not just as a manager, but as a person. And while Melania had handled the situation with a grace that only deepened Natalie's shame, it also gave her a glimmer of hope. There was still a chance to make things right. The next morning, Natalie arrived at the boutique earlier than usual. The streets of Beverly Hills were quiet, bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. She took a deep breath before unlocking the doors, steeling herself for what she knew would be a difficult but necessary conversation. As the employees trickled in, Natalie gathered them in the small staff lounge. There was a palpable curiosity in the air. The team sensed that something important was about to happen. Clara, who had been at the center of the previous day's events, sat near the front, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Natalie stood before them, her usual air of authority tempered by a rare vulnerability. She took a moment to gather her thoughts before speaking. "I owe all of you an apology," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Yesterday, I made a mistake. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I treated someone unfairly. Worse, I set a poor example for all of you." The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Natalie continued, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her team. "This boutique has always been about more than luxury. It's about creating an experience, a place where every customer feels valued. Yesterday, I failed to uphold that standard. And for that, I am deeply sorry." She gestured to the envelope on the table, her voice softening. "This check was given to us by Melania Trump as a token of appreciation for your professionalism. You all handled yourselves with grace and respect in a situation that was, frankly, difficult because of my actions. You deserve this." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Clara was the first to speak, her voice hesitant but sincere. "Thank you, Natalie. I think we all learned something yesterday. Natalie nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. We have an opportunity to grow from this. Respect and kindness shouldn't depend on who someone is or who we think they are. That's a lesson I needed to relearn, and I hope it's one we can all carry forward. The employees exchanged nods of agreement, a sense of unity settling over the group. For the first time in a long time, Natalie felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't perfect, but she was determined to be better, for herself, for her team, and for the boutique. The days that followed were marked by subtle but significant changes. Natalie began to take a more active role in fostering a positive work environment, encouraging her team to share their ideas and concerns openly. She held regular meetings to discuss ways to improve the customer experience, emphasizing the importance of empathy and respect in every interaction. Clara, who had impressed everyone with her poise during Melania's visit, became a key voice in these discussions. Her insights and observations were invaluable, and Natalie found herself relying on her more and more. It wasn't long before Natalie promoted Clara to a senior associate position, a move that was met with widespread approval from the team. Meanwhile, Natalie worked to repair her own reputation, both within the boutique and beyond. She reached out to Melania's publicist, sending a heartfelt letter of apology that acknowledged her mistakes and expressed her gratitude for the lesson she had been taught. Though she didn't expect a response, the act of writing the letter felt cathartic, a step toward redemption. As weeks turned into months, the boutique began to thrive in a new way. Customers noticed the shift in atmosphere, praising the staff for their attentiveness and warmth. Word of mouth spread, not about the incident with Melania, but about the exceptional service and genuine care that defined the shopping experience. For Natalie, the transformation was deeply personal. She had started as a gatekeeper of exclusivity, but she was learning to see her role differently. The boutique wasn't just a fortress for the elite. It was a space where people's stories and aspirations intersected, and it was her responsibility to honor that. One afternoon, Clara approached Natalie with a hesitant smile. "There's someone here to see you," she said. Natalie's heart skipped a beat as she stepped onto the showroom floor. Standing by the entrance was Melania Trump, her poised demeanor as striking as ever. This time there was no entourage, no photographers, just Melania, holding a small, elegantly wrapped box. "Good afternoon," Melania said, her tone warm but reserved. "I wanted to thank you for the letter. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and I respect that." Natalie felt a lump rise in her throat. "Thank you, Mrs. Trump. Your words and actions have had a profound impact on me and my team. We're better because of it." Melania handed her the box, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Consider this a small token of appreciation for your growth and for the work you've done to make this boutique a better place." Natalie accepted the gift with trembling hands, her heart swelling with gratitude. As Melania turned to leave, she paused and added, "Never underestimate the power of kindness. It can change everything." As the doors closed behind her, Natalie stood in the quiet of the boutique, the box clutched to her chest. It wasn't just a gift. It was a reminder of the journey she had undertaken, a journey that had transformed not only her career, but also her character. The boutique on Rodeo Drive was no longer just a haven of luxury. It had become a place of redemption, a symbol of the power of humility, respect, and second chances. And for Natalie, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by exclusivity, but by compassion. Thank you for watching Stories That Heal. This story reminds us that first impressions can be deceiving, and true character is revealed in moments of humility and growth. Helena's encounter with Melania Trump wasn't just a wake-up call. It was a powerful lesson in respect and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments and share it with someone who needs a reminder about the impact of kindness. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more real stories that challenge and inspire.